The mind flare really did get to Billy, and this is what happened to him. Welcome back to another movie review. Today we're going to talk about the meta commentary remake of Faces of Death, the 1978 movie that was full of fabrications, but is now a meta commentary on social media. Starring Dacre Montgomery as Arthur Spevek, or the killer in this movie. You also have Barbie Ferreira from Euphoria After Party playing Margot, the main protagonist in this film. And you have a couple additional actors in here. You got Josie Tota from iCarly, Big Mouth, and then Charlie XCX shows up in a few small scenes as one of Margot's coworkers. The movie basically follows Margot, who's employed at a website content company. She's a content moderator, and she comes across a series of violent videos that are reproducing scenes from the original 1978 Faces of Death, and she becomes to believe that they're real and that they're not some kind of theatrical art form that somebody's putting up on the internet. So this leads her to investigating these video uploads, and a lot of the movie follows kind of two different perspectives. You follow Margot and kind of her life. There's something that happened in the background, especially with her sister, with something along social medias that they hint at throughout the film. Eventually you find out what that is. And then you follow Arthur, the killer, and him recreating the Faces of Death scenes by basically kidnapping social media influencers or people in the entertainment industry. He does kidnap a couple social media influencers along with a newscaster who basically jumps from a traumatic incident in one news segment to a uplifting segment. And there's a stark contrast that the killer sees with that, and he's trying to prove something with his art. Either it went over my head, or I didn't really pay too much attention to exactly what his true motive is, other than wanting to give people what they want in providing these reimagining of the original Faces of Death. Overall, I did enjoy the movie. I did watch this as a double feature after seeing Exit 8, and I enjoyed this a lot more than Exit 8. I think even though it's not the greatest horror movie, it does have a lot of weaknesses in it. It was mostly entertaining. I found Dacre Montgomery's performance is kind of the thing that sells this movie. He's really good as the kind of sadistic killer and plays him in a couple different unique ways throughout the film, depending on the scenario he is in. So the movie really is kind of this two perspectives following Margot as she's trying to investigate this killer using Reddit and some other online areas to get other people to help her investigate. And then you have Arthur the killer, who's also monitoring some of these message boards or Reddit and social media as he's liking to see the views. He's responding to people's comments and being a pro artist in regards to, saying he enjoyed the cinematography and things along those lines. There's a funny scene where he's asking a question and decides how many question marks he's going to put, whether it's 3 or 2. That was kind of funny. He's also leading on Margot, even though he doesn't know who she is, as she's putting up this information on the internet to try and get other people to say, hey, is this real? Does it look real? Am I overblowing this scenario? These two actors, I think, are the key to the movie. Dacre is really good as the sadistic killer, and then Barbie is pretty good. Her character is kind of interesting that it's hard to tell if it's good acting or not. I think it does really well for this movie. She's pretty down to earth, and she seems like a normal person that would be in this scenario. She does kind of get a little out of control mentally towards the end, kind of making some dumb decisions throughout the film. And then the supporting cast, I think, is where the weakest part of this movie is. There's not a lot of cast in this movie. It is a pretty relatively small movie for the story they're trying to tell, in my opinion. You'd have Charlie XCX as his coworker that's kind of funny for a couple scenes. The roommate provides a little more context around the Faces of Death because that movie exists in this universe they're in. And his acting is a little bit questionable, especially in a few scenes. And then there's the boss who's just there to kind of make sure the company is keeping people on the platform. So he doesn't really provide any kind of help to her as she is investigating these videos and trying to validate if they're real or not. And it feels very indie small budget with such a small cast and kind of small perspective. It's one of those movies. It's similar to my opinions on Dead Man's Wire, which was a relatively small production movie. My biggest critique of that movie didn't really sell the story as something that was of national news back at that time, even though it was. And then this is a similar thing. There's something going on that you can see that these videos that the killer is uploading are getting massive views, but there's nothing outside of the scenes with the main people that indicate this, except for a couple small news segments that kind of discuss this, and there's some theories going on around that. And so I think that is kind of the weakest part of the movie. I do think that there could have been a really strong movie here. I'm going to say it even though I probably shouldn't. I'll probably get some flack for this, but I do think there's a world, there's a universe where this movie was made in it with the likes of Seven or Silence of the Lambs. I do think there's a story that they could have told here that would be a lot deeper and a lot more intriguing than what was presented. And I think a lot of that is due towards the budget. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. I did enjoy it for the most part, but I do see that it has a lot of flaws. But I also see that there could have been something there. There could have been something really good there that could have taken it to the next level. Overall, I did enjoy Faces of Death. I do recommend seeing it in the theater. There was some people in my audience that were squirming a little bit on some of the scenes. I don't think the movie was that frightening or scary or grotesque or gory. The one scene that is a bit of a spoiler, and I won't say it, there's one scene in the movie that I think is the most shocking of everything that happens, and it's not one of the recreations of the Faces of Death, because they do fall on the lines of recreating these Faces of Death scenarios in different ways a little bit. And if you've seen the Faces of Death, there's nothing new here, portrayed in a slightly different way. I do recommend Scared to Death. Definitely check it out in the theater. 3 stars. All right, now let's move on to spoilers. So Margot does make a lot of dumb decisions and kind of help perpetrates this killer's videos by actually going on Reddit and sharing out the videos and getting bigger intrigue. So I think there's something to say about not only investigating something like this, but perpetrating it more, even though you're doing it for good reasons, can help amplify the story. So by doing this, she does get her roommate killed, because the killer realizes that someone's investigating him. He happens to work at a cell phone company or a cell phone retailer. So he has access to people's phone numbers, and he's very technical and is able to pinpoint where people live. And so he ends up finding out where Margot lives, goes to kidnap her, and basically kills her roommate and kidnaps her during the scenario, and uses fentanyl to knock people out and take them to his house in Florida. And there's maybe some kind of Florida man insight into this that you could take away from the movie. But Margot does make some dumb decisions throughout the film. You do learn the reason why she works at this content company is because her and her sister were doing some kind of a dance routine for social media, but they were doing it on a train track where a train was coming. She was fortunate enough to get off the train track fast enough. Why they waited so long to actually get off the tracks beyond me, but her sister goes to step off and get out of the way of the train, but she slips on some rocks, and she kind of gets ended that way. And they don't really show any gore in this. I do think it's shocking how fast that happens, so I found that to be the most interesting death in the movie. The other ones are just recreations of the Faces of Death scenes. There's a guy getting shot by a firing squad. There's a person getting electrocuted. There is one scene where the killer does basically dismember the roommate, but that's all off screen. All you do is see a bucket. It's a bit gory, and he's basically live streaming him dissolving this body. I don't know if this content will get blocked by YouTube. Who knows? I'm not monetized. It doesn't matter. The company they work at is called Kino, which, if I'm not mistaken, means cinema. Let me see. What is it? Is a German, Slavic, Nordic word meaning cinema or movie theater. That's kind of an interesting word they use for this social media company within this universe. It is a questionable place she works at. Her boss, even though he sees some of these videos she's sharing, just says, "Oh no, let it go through. It's obviously fake." So he's more on the company side of things, wanting to make sure that, hey, keep those clicks going through, keep those eyes on the screen. And there's also one scene where she's in the stairwell eating lunch. She happens to hear a couple people having some relations in the stairwell, and then they pine up to a sign that says, "Don't do that." Which, if you have to have a sign up that says that, how often is actually occurring in this place of business? They're probably lacking in their HR department. So the third act it is kind of a mess, but it's also probably the most entertaining part of the movie. So Margot and this other character, the social media person who's played by Josie Tota, escape. Margot stays around in the house trying to get evidence, basically taking the killer's hard drive that has some of the raw files, raw videos of the recordings he created, and then the other characters like running outside. They find out they're in this like neighborhood in Florida. There's a big, I don't know, I guess field between all the houses, and so she jumps the fence and she's getting chased. And instead of staying along the fence line, she's like running out into the open while the killer has a rifle and trying to shoot her. He eventually shoots her in the side and brings her back, and then Margot is actually able to escape, runs away, goes to the cops, and the cops bring her back to the place, but he calls in a fake 911 call saying that he had some people stalking him and uses that against her when they show up. And it's a little kind of cheesy and over the top, but I mean, I guess with cops these days, you're not sure if that would actually happen or not. I think the likelihood of it happening could be true. She ends up back at the police station. She gets a text from the killer saying, "Bring back my hard drive or these other people die." So she heads back to his house. It's at night in a Uber or some other kind of ride share that she's in. And there's a part in the movie where she doesn't leave her house a lot except to go to work because she's known as Train Girl, because her and her sister did this dance scene, as I mentioned earlier, where her sister died. And so she's very recognizable as the cops leaked this footage. It wasn't something she put up on the internet. The cops leaked it, and she ended up becoming famous because of that. And this Uber driver's like, "I recognize you from somewhere." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm the Train Girl." And the guy's just like, "Oh, that sucks." Drops her off at the killer's house, and then it goes into this whole scene where the camera pans out. She's standing in the house. It's dark. It's at night. There's lights. There's a little bit of fog, and it looks like the scene from The Exorcist when the priest goes to the house, which I definitely think they did that on purpose. She walks into the house, and then he takes her out to the garage where he already killed the two people and put them on mannequins in this weird setup, and he is gonna, film the final kill for the masses. It doesn't go his way. She ends up fighting back. So before she actually goes in the house, she does use some Narcan up her nose to basically prevent the effects of being hit with the fentanyl again. So when she does go in the house, she pretends to black out when she gets injected by him. And then she fights back. She's using this little knife that's hidden in a lipstick container that he does check, but it does have real lipstick on it. She pops the lipstick off and then starts stabbing him. They get in this confrontation. They fight. She's ends up victorious against him. And at this whole time, she has some kind of small camera in her shirt. She's filming everything to get evidence. And then she takes that and uploads it to the Kino website. And that's kind of where the movie ends. As she's laughing maniacally, dealing with the outcome of her actions. It is kind of a mess of an ending, but it is entertaining. And there's a lot of commentary on that and like what social media has become today. So I do recommend seeing this movie in the theater. I thought it was fun. Not the greatest movie, but it was entertaining. I liked it better than Exit 8 personally, even though people are praising Exit 8. I just thought that movie fell a little flat. So Faces of Death, 2 stars. Remember to hit that like and subscribe if you like these videos. I will be doing a video review for every movie I see in the theater this year. So this is number, I think 39? I think this was number 39 for the year. So much more to go. Definitely going to break my record.